see about the quality of this video because there's a lot of ambient noise. And I'm on the dock. It's a beautiful day. It's July 5th. Me and Mutt are just hanging out on the dock. Just went for a nice long walk. Unfortunately, the dog found a dead carp, and those can be quite large, so it was almost the length of his whole body. He's like, I don't know, 30 inches long, and he just slid through the entirety of this dead fish. And when he's like, you know, connecting with a rancid scent, he doesn't listen to me. He's a very well-behaved dog, but I could not get there in time, so I have to go home and hose him down, like, really well. I did want to pull just a very simple card spread. What I am getting just after waking up, being in a new location, the need to come back to root chakra, which is safety and security. I think that when we go through different kinds of transitions, whether or not we know that we're going through transitions, but there's an energetic transition right now that is affecting the collective energies, we can feel a little bit, untethered from a sense of stability. So it calls in the need for grounding. For me as a water sign, I like to ground. You know, you want to do earthing stuff where you actually like use your bare feet on the earth and connect to earth. But as a water sign, I ground myself around water too. So being able to sit by the lake and just look at the water is very grounding for me. Hopefully I don't lose any of my cards over the dock's edge. We have the King of Swords, the Five of Cups, the Queen of Pentacles, and the Seven of Wands. So we have a king and a queen, again, king of truth and clarity, being able to wield a sword to carve the physical elements around him and change situations. Queen of Pentacles is kind of like wifey energy, like really stable. And then Five of Cups and Seven of Wands we've seen fairly frequently recently, but it is the energy of lamenting over things that haven't worked out and a defensiveness. So I see that there are two different, you know, camps here, and I'd like to get a clarifier for each one. Yeah, so for the King and Queen of Pentacles, King of Swords, Four of Wands came out, so it's still about like a kingdom or a sense of stability, like an inner kingdom, if you will. Clarifier for the Seven of Wands and the Five of Cups is the Queen of Swords. So that's interesting, because before I even drew the Queen of Swords, I divided them into two camps. It was 444 when I looked at the timestamp. It's almost like she belongs with him because they are King and Queen of Swords. But the King of Swords is with the Queen of Pentacles right now. The Queen of Swords is coming in to remind us that, she I would imagine would kind of exercise some tough love with this character and say, like, get up. It's not time to still be fixated on that which did not pan out in a favorable manner. There are still 2 cups behind him. And I also see the background, the kingdom that he's not looking at, as the kingdom on the 4 of Cups card. He's closer than he thinks to this form of stability. What can we get as a clarifier for the Queen of Swords with the 5 of Cups and the 7 of Wands? The Ace of Pentacles. Start something new, okay? So even if there are things that haven't worked out and you are trying to work with the energy that's happening in order to affect positive change in your life, it's okay to make, I said this I think yesterday, it's okay to make each new day a new start of its own and try out new things within the micro cycles of energy within a larger cycle. On the bottom of the deck, we have the Devil. Okay, so this comes back to using the things that aren't good for us as a layer of insulation or protection. And by that I mean excuses that keep us from doing certain things that we know would be good for us to do right now. What excuses are you still telling yourself that are keeping you trapped? How can you turn into a new direction and cultivate a sense of curiosity about avenues not yet tried? Clarification for the Devil and the Ace of Pentacles, trying something new. How can we actually put ourselves into a state of, free will, always at play. Nobody can make you release your addictions if they're serving you. And of course they are serving you. That's why we become addicted to things. Yeah, 9 of Wands. It's this kind of defensive energy again. And maybe some of our addictions are intertwined with other people, like social addictions, social drinking, social smoking, social gossiping. Maybe you're part of a toxic circle of people that are low vibrational in nature because they don't know how to relate to one another without putting other people down or talking about other people in a negative way. And that's not healthy for you anymore, but it would involve too much compromise in terms of how you spend your time, who you spend your time with. King of Pentacles is here. So now we have the Queen of Pentacles, the King of Pentacles, the Queen of Swords, and the King of Swords. We have 2 balanced pairs. And again, I'm going back to the 4 of Wands. 2 plus 2 is 4. There is a lot of stability that's waiting to be let in. The Devil implies that we're not wanting to let it in because it's functioning for us. The things that are keeping us from our ultimate stability are functioning for us. And I forgot about this. I got a message in the form of a visual yesterday. It was like a cell. It's far too bright to take these off. It was like a cell or an amoeba, okay? Imagine like a little bacteria cell that has little pockets. If I could draw it, if I had a notepad with me, I would. But every little pocket, it was like these corners of this cell were points of fear. And the cell has definitive boundaries, right? This little organism. And the little pockets that protruded out further, the furthermost edges that protruded out, that seed of fear was inside the barrier of the cell. And what the cell doesn't know is that if it punctures its cell wall to merge with the environment on the other side of it, it's another cell. Okay, I'm seeing this as like a petri dish, somebody examining these things, interacting. And if it isn't willing to merge with its surroundings, then it can't expand and grow. And it was like the cell wasn't realizing that the thing on the other side of fear, or this little pocket, I saw these little pockets of fear in the cell, and it was keeping them inside of its walls because as a autonomous functioning cell, it had a way of life. but it didn't realize that it could change its way of life by expanding and growing. It didn't need to keep these seeds of fear. Basically, what's on the other side of fear is growth and expansion. And if I could draw out the visual, I think it would make more sense, but hopefully I described it well enough. Yeah, I mean, what I really like, I'm in a totally different part of the world now, but there's still swallow energy in the animal totems, which is about swiftness and air energy. And with the King of Swords and the Queen of Swords, they're not like a bullshitting pair. They tell things very truthfully because they know that they're right, because their power and their vantage point is well earned. So my point in sharing that is that there were swallows in Italy, and I was thinking about how cool it is that they move with such agility. There's two of them that are doing like this dance here. They're just like flying around together in really tight circles. I'd like a clarification card for this type of swiftness. What's really going on in this cycle? And by that I mean the mini cycle that we're in the bigger cycle that's beginning. I talked a lot about a birth canal being kind of a death and a rebirth. And now we're at the beginning of something new. High Priestess card. There's always going to be mysterious, unknown elements in new beginnings. Again, with the cell analogy, it doesn't know what's on the other side, but it takes a leap of faith. It takes a leap of faith to get there. So I like these energies because the High Priestess is kind of, I see her as in a different camp. She's not really a king or a queen. She's more of the ethereal, the mystical. She represents the unknown mystery of the highly intuitive realm of life that is unseen. Whereas the King of Queen of Swords, the King of Queen of Pentacles, King and Queen of Pentacles, they are of, they do rule kingdoms in a material sense. They rule aspects of our lives. And the High Priestess is what's going on underneath all of that. But then the Fool brings in what I said before. We're no longer in this canal of darkness, the cocoon, right? There is sunshine on the other side of this full moon, which, by the way, I watched the full moon rise last night after fireworks went off, and it was like blood red and just like huge. And the way that it came up over the horizon, it was just incredibly, like, I felt like I couldn't look away from it. It was like I was just making eye contact with this moon. And I was saying kind of like affirmations to it. I was declaring things because I want to infuse this moon with intention. And it's interesting because there was a sternness about, I spoke in my other video with the full moon about it being like a confessional that you would do with a priest. But instead of a priest, it's the moon, and you're trying to strip away the bullshit of what's been going on to get real with yourself, because you know that on the other side there's like a wise counsel that is non-judgmental but interested in helping you align with a better path. And I focused on that in my full moon video, but I failed to mention that it is an auspicious time for manifestation, because Capricorn is, if you know any Capricorns in your life, they're career driven, they're motivated, they're good at accomplishing things. They're very temporal in their ways of solving things because they're dedicated to, how can I make this like happen for me? They see things that other people don't, who are air signs, or who are water signs and are more rooted in different ways of navigating the world. So because we're starting a new chapter and the Capricorn full moon is kind of a marking point of that chapter, I see like a really nice contrast here between the paternal and this being Capricorn, this wisdom, this it's a loving paternal energy. And then the Fool would be like the child of like, you know, how are you going to discover what's meant for you? How are you going to create new things? You just got to start going for it. We also have the Well. So going into the depths of self-discovery. And the Page of Wands. I see the Page of Wands as like a really willing energy, almost like she's a friend of the Fool and they're going out together. So in the same way that we have like masculine and feminine matured energies within the King and Queen of Wands and Swords, in the earlier part of the card pool, this would be kind of like the childlike willingness to explore without fear of failure. And then exceptionally lovely, we have the Wheel of Fortune and the Sun. And if you notice, like if you kind of scale back and see this, just focusing on the gold, the sun, as I talked about 2 days ago, it illuminates everything. This is happiness and fulfillment coming in, and scaling back, it's like the gold orb, the gold sphere of the sun is what the Wheel of Fortune holds. So in one sense, your destiny is a collaborative process that you can get on board with shaping. But on the other hand, there is a divine timing. That's the term that people use to describe, like, you can't really force things. You need to be able to flow with what's happening. And that's why I'm doing these readings, because it's a way to articulate what is happening. It also speaks to not being too cynical, because this youthful energy with new beginnings, if they encountered, you know, if they were setting out on a new journey and they encountered a steep hill or a tough passage or a river that didn't have a clear crossing point, they wouldn't give up. They haven't been tainted by the devastation of failure in life. The King and Queen of Swords and the King and Queen of Pentacles have, but they knew how to conquer and overcome. That's why the King and Queen of Swords know that they are right and that they are capable of being stern and loving at the same time, because their advice is well founded on a wealth of experience. The King and Queen of Pentacles have ultimate material stability to show for their wisdom and their advice. They have the receipts to prove that their methods are effective. And that is why they're kind of like this wise counsel to these younger energies, which I would say are a part of ourselves. This is the new fresh energy that's coming in to take the place of the parts of ourselves that are dying and closing up, really. And again, it could be circles of people that aren't the healthiest influences for you. Or it could be the defensiveness that you have against recognizing what's not working in your life. Sometimes we kind of want it all. We want to start a new chapter. We want to be able to create more stability financially for ourselves, more fulfillment, more activities in our lives that align with passions that we want, more connectivity and health and love in our relationships, be it platonic or romantic. But we sort of pretend like we can keep certain things intact while we create that. And that's typically not the case, because we only have our human lives, our human minds, our human emotion. Like, everything's kind of finite. We have depths within us. And I see that quote by Winston Churchill, I think, I contain multitudes. And I saw like a funny meme yesterday, and it was like, it's so irritating when you meet someone that just contains a single tude. When you contain multitudes, you can tell right away. Yeah, we contain multitudes as people, but I still see the need to release. If you're trying to welcome things in, there may not be, because we are these finite containers, we are not infinite like the universe. The universe will flow through us in an infinite fashion, but we have to release in order to welcome in, because we can only hold so much. Yeah, the Hierophant is what I got when I cut the deck. I'm gonna get one more card. Strength is also here in the middle of the cut. So it's like, I see Wheel of Fortune and Sun again. Strength is not pushing or forcing anything, but there's this immense dedication to the process of releasing right now that doesn't come from a strong sense of outward exertion. It's all about inner exertion. And it makes me think of being a tuning note for a band, being able to hold your embouchure muscles such that the vibrato of that note is not wavering too much, right? Our ability to hold true to the things that we're trying, it's hard to break long-standing or tough habits that have functioned for us for a long time. So the Strength card for me is saying, like, we are needing to tend to like the inner world of self that's being able to accomplish that for us right now, because it's not easy. It's almost like if you look away even for a minute, you'll slide back into your old patterns, which is really hard because that feels and sounds exhausting, right? But his eyes are closed. This hand posture that he's making is what you see the baby Jesus doing in Baby Jesus and Madonna paintings. This hand signal. And his eyes are closed. There's like a meditative state. It's almost like you have to let certain parts of your ego and yourself go to sleep and turn off, even though you're used to having these parts of you steer your ship, right? But they are working off of a compass that was leading you in circles, or it wasn't leading you to your soul's full capacity to experience happiness and stability. Again, going back to the Four of Wands that came out earlier. I'd like to get a clarifier for the Sun and the Wheel of Fortune. For the Sun and the Wheel of Fortune. It calls back into mind the need to be gentle with ourselves in a restful fashion. So I feel like we're doing, and I got this visual too, I think last week. It's like a catfish or a pleco fish that have the suction mouths on the side of a fish tank. It's like we're pulling it off and it doesn't want to come off. It's stuck. That's where it's been. There's a source of food there for it in the algae. And that may not be the best example because those fish are meant to eat that algae, and that's a symbiotic relationship in the ecology of the fish tank. But my point is there's this slow and sticky resistance, and I feel like we're needing to apply energy in order to pull just enough to detach it, but not so much that we are doing too many things too quickly, because it hasn't come out today, but the Knight of Pentacles is the slow moving energy. The Wheel of Fortune is the energy that's telling us that despite what we want and our intentions, things still will, the wheel will still turn. Things still will change in a way, High Priestess, that isn't really up to us, but our intention Again, I'm seeing two planes or two lines starting out in a certain point. Our intention of how we orient ourselves at this moment is going to determine where we end up in that unknown force that drives the turning of time and the turning of things. So your agency is not absolute. You don't get to pick everything that happens to you in life. But the stuff that we can't control, it's going to respond to what we do at this time. And that comes back to free will and intention and the entire idea of manifestation. And so I think that the catfish or the sucker analogy, the suction analogy is about, if you pull too quickly, if you try to eject yourself from all these things, it is not sustainable, right? Too much energy, you'll be exhausted from having 4 perfect days of changed behavior and different things. It's not sustainable to make absolute changes overnight. And if you're doing that, it's another form of avoidance, because it probably in most cases isn't addressing the root of why we were living our lives in certain ways. For example, with a sense of like people that aren't good for you in your best interest, if you don't see them for a solid week, you're not addressing the reasons within you that you were attracting that group of people in the first place. And maybe if you do move in a different direction and connect with other people, they're going to replicate the same energy that was unhealthy or low vibrational as the former people did. Or it just won't be a lasting change because you never created closure. You didn't go about this in a mature way as far as really communicating to yourself with honesty. Not that you need to go to people and be like, listen, you're bad and I'm not friends with you anymore. You know, I'm just saying it's an example of managing transitions with a sense of dignity for all parties involved, because when you come from a heart-based place, you have a lot of compassion for people and you see people for how they are, and you see them in a way that explains why they do what they do, even if it's not ways of being, behaviors, or activities that you personally want to take part in anymore. So there's forgiveness for them, there's forgiveness for yourself for partaking in it. Yeah, and another example of this could be, here we go. Another example of this could be what I've said before about being in a partnership and not having it be necessarily abusive or so toxic, but just knowing that it just, at the end of the day, ultimately isn't the thing that's aligned with your highest happiness as a soul, as you are in this lifetime. This speaks again to just needing to come back to that space of inner dialogue in an honest manner. Are there still things that are causing you to feel avoidant? And I'm going back to that cell analogy, like the stuff, and this is the title image of the video I posted at the full moon. It was, the way to your next level up is always through the parts of yourself that you avoid. I feel this is avoidant, and it's sneaky, and it's deceptive against one's self, and there's no need for that, because the cell is never going to grow or evolve or merge with other life forms in this co-creative nature. And if it doesn't do that, right, if you think about like evolution and things kind of growing and combining, and it will never become anything else. And it has the potential to become, you know, an egg yolk, and then a chick, and then a chicken. If it never goes through these stages, of merging, then it will never be able to enter the next level of its own development. And it will never know that it was actually in an early stage of its own development. And what's interesting about that is that the cell wall would need to be penetrated or broken in order for that fear. The fear is like the little guardian that keeps that cell wall from being able to merge with anything else. It's a protective layer. And it doesn't know when it's being broken down that it's actually leveling up and merging with something to create a bigger force within itself than it could have, ever dreamed it could be. When you're going through the period of rapid expansion, it can feel like total death and annihilation. And we have the Eight of Cups again, about sitting with the guidance of the subconscious, right? And I'm saying right now, why are we avoiding the things that we do that contribute to our own unhappiness or our own stuckness? What is the perceived threat in a person's own mind when they're being avoidant? What do you think is going to happen if you admit certain things to yourself? How can you look at that inner process of the things that you avoid and try to ask yourself and really study why that is the way that it is? Connect with the feminine aspect of being able to sit within the discomfort of different emotions in order to determine, like, I see this character as not really even sure. It's everything from the posture to the staff to it's not like he's a page energy who's on his feet ready to go. He's not the accomplice to the fool who's setting out on the journey. She looks like she just, had a little drink of water and was like, okay, I'm waiting for you, let's go. He's just been here for a while, and he's not sure if he's even gonna get up. And that's okay. But he wouldn't be in that position if he didn't have something within him that's trying to guide him forward. And if there wasn't a wish within him that could offer him some type of guidance, right? And by some type of guidance, I mean, why change it all, right? Why change it all? Well, with the Wheel of Fortune and the Sun and the Hierophant and all these kind of major cards at play, the Star as well, change is the natural pattern of the universe. You are in a stuck state of resisting if you ever think, no matter how old you are. And I think I'm with my grandparents here now, spending time with family. My grandfather is turning 90 soon. My grandmother is too. They both are. And the amount of change that I saw in my grandfather as I grew up was really miraculous to me, because he always taught me, what he would say is, show up and do the work. Show up and do the work. Show up and do the work. Because that's how he lived his life. Yeah, Four of Pentacles, creating stability. As if it was simple, right? And as a younger, in my teens, in my 20s, I couldn't show up and do the work because I didn't want to. And it's more complicated than that. It's more complicated than that. But we evolved each other in very interesting ways, and I'll always cherish the relationship that I have with my grandfather, because I came through a period of challenge from my teens and early 20s, and I've realized that he was right all along. But he also realized that I wasn't able to do what he did when he did it in the way that he did it, because I'm built differently and my mind is different and the world isn't the way that it used to be. And we kind of met in the middle in this space of compassion for one another. And I always wanted to be able to do that as if it was as easy as he made it seem. And I always blamed myself for not being able to just show up and do the work and get things done and just make it simple. I always resented myself for not being able to make him proud by just taking his advice and showing him that I was showing up and doing the work. And the fact of the matter is, there are certain paradigms that the world has outgrown. And young people are reflections of that. If we see patterns in the spiking of certain mental health or disability or certain things, the generations as they grow up, they show what the world is creating within people and conditioning. It makes me think of the phrase art imitates life, imitates art, imitates life. The people, the waves of children, this goes back to what I was saying in a video when I was in Italy, when I was talking about how I support expression of self and I support the LGBTQ movement, and I identify as part of a queer community, as somebody who's like bi-curious and bisexual and has been. I grew up that way, you know? But I do think when children are going through really transformative times of self-discovery and they're being exposed to certain things, they will gravitate towards that for a sense of belonging. When children are supposed to explore and figure out, you know, who they are and their identity without needing to bring in, I'm not saying I don't agree with people being able to choose their path, but the problem for me is that a big uptick in people wanting to get hormones and treatment involved to become transgender, it seems more like an expression of young people wanting to find themselves, and for the movement of that being like celebrated, like there's a place for you to belong here if you don't belong anywhere else. It's very attractive and appealing. And then of course you hear and read about detransitioning being a very big movement as like this compensation, it's the result of people making these really high stakes decisions when all they were doing is exploring with their identity and their method of self-expression, as any young person does. No matter when you grew up, you went through a period of, you know, maybe wearing different clothes or listening to different music. When I was in like 6th grade, I went to Montreal with my family and we went to a MAC cosmetics store, and I bought a bright aqua shimmery glittery eyeshadow because I identify as a mermaid. And I wore it like every day, and if I ever saw, and I had like braces, I was 12, 13, but I wanted to wear this bright aqua like neon eyeshadow. Operation Aqua. Operation Aqua is when they have to go in to the water and find a bowling ball. It's a drill. But I mean, okay, so to bring this back around to the initial purpose of why I was telling this story, I believe that a part of my grandfather was modified in that it is as simple as showing up and doing the work. But for the generation that I've grown up in, you know, we grew up with and alongside technology. We are the last generation to know a life without it, to know a world without it. We got, you know, we had a computer in our household. I was 5, 6 years old, and it was a Macintosh. It was a 1998 model, you know, old computer. My relationship with the computer started by just being able to go onto Microsoft Word and type stories, which I did a lot of, and then we printed them out, and I had my own filing cabinet in the filing drawer. But the rate at which we were affected by the technology growing up alongside us and how that affected mental health and all these other things, right? It didn't become as easy as showing up and doing the work because we had more going on. I think that kids grow up very quickly when it comes to being exposed to things through the internet these days. And I just want to reiterate again, I'm not opposed to anybody choosing how they want to identify when it comes to gender and sexuality. But I think with any decision, you wouldn't ask a child to choose, you know, a major life decision Like if I said I need this tattoo in order to feel like myself, and I was 9 years old, would my parents be like, okay, if you need this tattoo in order to feel like yourself, we're gonna let you get a tattoo? It's irreversible, you know? In the same way that it would take a lot of effort to have somebody detransition. I could remove this tattoo, but it would take pain and laser, you know, it's invasive to do. It's a somewhat permanent decision, or it is when you choose to do it. And then to undo it, it becomes a whole thing. Whereas if, you know, my parents just saw me as a child being like, okay, you want a tattoo? Well, just go ahead and draw all over yourself, which I did growing up, until you're old enough to make that permanent decision for yourself. That's how I see it. And I know not everybody agrees with that. And I really don't know why I'm talking about this again. But while I was talking, judgment came out. Judgment shows when it is time for self-evaluation. You are at a crux for reaching a new life and must purge those things that would hinder you from being renewed. Rebirth, absolution, renewal, and freedom.
May I have your attention, please? The water rescue drill has been completed. All waterfront activities can resume. Children in swimming groups are to be sent back into swimming.
And when I cut the deck 2 times, I've got the Knight of Swords and the Queen of Wands. And what I said about the Knight of Swords for the entire time that I did readings when I was in Italy is that it's like our Knight of harsh truths, right? The King of Swords is sitting in the throne and he's already made the determinations and the decisions. But the Knight of Swords is on horseback and he's moving through the changes and making these decisions as time passes. The Queen of Wands is the passionate, creative, nurturing essence that's going to keep us focused on the star, right? And not let this be. I mean, I recorded a reading yesterday, but it wouldn't post for some reason, and then I had to drive for 3 hours. So I'll post it before this one, but I was saying, like, there's a lot of heaviness in the wake of the Capricorn full moon, and I wanted to, like, open the door up for lighter energy, an energy that feels fresh and almost playful in like that youthful spirit of the Fool and the Page of Wands. And so I feel like when we're wishing upon a star, right, it's not this lofty childlike thing, because this is a crucial, it says you're at a crux in your life. It's a crucial point. I think the Queen of Wands is not childlike because she's a queen. She's a queen. But I see her as one of the queens that would be more likely, and with the Queen of Cups, who's all about, you know, complete loving maternal energy. They, of the 4 queens, I would see as being most likely to get up off their thrones and be like, let's start playing some music, let's start dancing, let's get the kids involved. You know, they have this love of life because they're rooted in this soft, beautiful, emotional, passionate, creative space. I almost feel wrong using an example of trans identity because it's so like controversial and political, but it came out again, so hopefully people can just hear that for what it is, and that I'm not necessarily judging anybody or anybody's process or the way that anybody wants to live their lives. But of course there's a but, right? It makes me, I brought it up more because I'm thinking about there's always going to be something that youth, children, young generations have as their own special, you know, affliction or battle, and then they mirror back to the older generations what that means about where we're at as a society. And I think this is one of those things. I'm not denying its existence or its importance, or that we can allow people to go through those paths of self-discovery, because I know that from a devil's advocate perspective, there are people who are happily in a transgendered body now, and they say, if I could have made this transition when I was much younger, I could have saved myself from a lot of trauma and a lot of pain. That could be true. That could be true. That could be true. But I also wonder if there's a lot of trauma and pain being created from allowing children to make adult decisions, and adults feeling obligated to, show that they love their child by letting their child make decisions that are more so aligned with how a young person just simply needs to play with self-discovery and can do so in less consequential ways. Yeah, I don't know. It makes me feel mildly uncomfortable to talk about that, but at the same time, if it's coming up, then I'm just gonna let it come up and share it in case it can be something of a metaphor too for anybody who's listening about something else. I mean, I started talking about being able to change the way that we see things in my relationship with my grandfather, feeling like I was kind of like a disappointment really when I was younger, because I couldn't do this simple set of instructions, which was show up and do the work when it comes to, attending school and being successful. I have a different way. I had a different path through my own self-discovery. Or I'll say it like this, I had to go on a side quest in order to be able to show up and do the work, because it wasn't something that I was capable of doing, because I have a very hard time committing myself to do things that I don't want to do. If I don't want to do something, then I have a hard time being able to get my thoughts behind it. I'm not clear, I'm not smart around it, I'm impassioned to do it. I can't flow all the energy that I have, which can, as can everybody's, the energy to create and move worlds, right? Hi boy, go swimming, hon, go swimming. Go swim. He's gonna go cool off. Good boy. I could not basically apply the energy that I possess, which I have a great amount of potential, as does everybody, to the things that I was being asked to do, because it was like my life or my soul was calling me to do other things. And I'm not saying they were all good, but they were part of my path. I'm really just kind of curious as to why the conversation with myself that I'm having on the dock today went in this direction. So I'm asking for a point of clarification. Actually, I said I was going to wrap this up, but I'm going to get 3 cards right here as clarifiers. Are you kidding? Yeah, okay, so this is going to be a clarifier on kind of the reading at large, but also, my choice, or the choice of the information that I'm pulling in, to include the example of the trans identity, because I don't like to make examples out of something that like a lot of people might listen to, or anybody might listen to and be like, that's like really judgmental. I don't know, I always worry about offending people, but I'm going to clarify, and I'm going to tie it into what was said in the other parts of the card pull. I think about that stuff a lot because I think about what's going on in the world, and I like to think about how we can educate and protect and amplify children for the beautiful, beings that they are, because children are just incredible, and children possess a lot of magic that hasn't been, inhibited or tampered with or blocked yet. So anyway, what came out was the 9 of Pentacles, the 8 of Cups again, and the Artist, okay? So within this process that we've been going through, and within the process that any human goes through to identify, like, what's your definition of paradise, right? What does it look like for you to be surrounded and protected and supported by the things, the people, the stuff, the ideas, the activities that make you feel good. Simply put, what is all of that about? You have the opportunity to draft it up. You have the opportunity to conceive of it. I'm not saying that it just comes into your life without any oppositional forces preventing it from flowing to you, especially because, again, with the whole devil card that came out in the beginning, sometimes we really just kind of we say like, well, I tried to do that, but it didn't work out. But we're denying to admit to ourselves that we didn't create the space in our lives for it to fully manifest without resistance, because we weren't willing to displace some of the unhealthy or lower vibrational things in order to make room for it. I don't really mean physically, literally. I just mean to make room for that energy. If we have these kind of finite worlds and shells of, there's a cell wall, there's a boundary to me and my life and the things that I can have my hands in at any given point in time. And if I have a full life and a full mind and a full, if I'm already married, then I can't go out and get, another husband. I would have to get divorced in order to choose to be with somebody else, or, I mean, you could argue around that however you want. But what I'm seeing is that personally and collectively, there's a way to draft up ultimate stability, a sense that's aligned. She's in no rush. She's just gonna be tending to her grapes and her garden. She has what she needs. That doesn't come overnight. It comes from, and I've always loved in this illustration that he's got wings on his ankles like Icarus, I wanna say. He's naked. He's stripped down to his pure essence, which, the artist card, people would agree, an artist really strips things down to try to see things as they are, because if you're not creating from an authentic place that's stripped down, then why are you making anything, So what I feel like I'm discovering within this and talking about is you need to be able to align with the truth. Again, thinking about the moon, align with the truth. The boys say hi, Mutt. Sing for them. Go, oh, woo, woo. Go, oh, woo, woo. Oh, woo, woo. Sing for them. Oh, woo, 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 woo. He says hi back. Sorry about that minor interruption. Kids love Mutt. Kids love Mutt. Yeah, they love you, Bubba. So what I'm seeing is that as a society, for the topics that I was just touching on, and on the individual level, we need to be able to connect with what's really going on, see things for as they are, what's truly aligned, right? And I'm saying if you were the parent of a child who wants to be the opposite sex, it doesn't mean you don't love them if you want them to wait until they're not, a child making an adult decision. It doesn't mean you don't love them. You have to follow your intuition around what's going to be the best, most stable and sustainable outcome. I'm not saying deny any child's self-expression, but it just gets really dicey when you think about the chemical and hormonal intervention. And again, I feel even sorry saying that, because I feel like people would be like, you're not accepting, you don't get it, you're not in that position. No, I'm not. But I've thought deeply on it. And again, this is why I put an email address in the comments or in the description box, because I'm so willing to have conversations about these things, because from a blameless standpoint, I'm just somebody trying to talk about things that I find other people are a little hesitant to discuss. I know I'm not the ultimate authority on stuff. I simply like to have like debates and conversations. So if you have anything to say about this and want to, or if you have an experience firsthand that could help me understand things a little bit better, then I welcome that type of communication. I don't have my comments turned on because that would just be like so. I don't. These videos they're not meant for just like, I don't know, people to comment on really. If there wants to be a dialogue opened about any of the things that I talk about, then that's why I put an email address. But so drafting up that new way of being that's going to be sustainable. Very interesting message today. Cut the deck and I got the star again, right? So just continue connecting with, and I see the star and the artist and the Eight of Cups as all being pretty interrelated here, as well as the Nine of Pentacles. Like, it's almost like, again, with the cell wall thing, we see ourselves as being entirely separate from something. And by that, I mean that something being our new life or our new way of doing things. We see ourselves as being very far away from that, but really it's on the other side of fear. It's on the other side of that leap of faith. And what feels like a complete death and collapse, in order to let things go, to make room for new things, is actually the process of merging with new energy that will make you, two times as much as what you were. Infinitely as much as what you were. It has to do again with like when you expand yourself to be part of something that's beyond your own limited existence as it is now. It will connect you with more people. It will connect you with a network, right? That cell growing into a network of cells growing into a whole being. There's a lot that you can accomplish when you start changing the way that you've been doing things. And I mentioned this in a few videos ago. It's about having a little bit of faith that the universe will open up for you immeasurably, if you take the first step and keep that strength card coming up in my mind. That quiet, like, resolve to continue to commit in each and every moment. Like, I really would like to quit smoking cigarettes. I really would, because I'd like to sing more and I'd like to take care. You can hear how raspy my voice is. Like, it's been like this for a long time. It's probably only going to get worse, It wouldn't really be like this if I didn't smoke so many cigarettes. And if I make that intention to not want to do it, but then I just have one, like, it's not like I've completely failed. It's like, well, the next 30 minutes are a chance to, you just one day at a time, a few moments at a time, you just keep working on what it is that you're working on, because long-term sustainable changes, they're not quick fixes. And if you try to just change things quickly, then maybe you're not getting to the root of something that, you are still in avoidance mode of the true root of why something even manifested in your life as a habit or a person or a relationship or something that doesn't serve you in the first place. All right, that'll do for today. Bye.